Looks like we have several folks joining us today. Again, if you are here for the NAIFA Cracking the Complexity of the Coverage Gap webinar, which is the shortfalls and why they exist, you are in the right place. We are going to begin in about 1 minute. Again, this is the NAIFA webinar, Cracking the Complexity of the Coverage Gap, the shortfalls and why they exist, beginning in 1 minute. Welcome to NAIFA's webinar on cracking the complexity of the coverage gap, the shortfalls and why they exist. I'm John Richardson. I'll be acting as your host today for this fantastic webinar. We've got quite a lineup of amazing speakers, but first I want to go over a few housekeeping items with you guys. Again, thank you so much for coming. According to LIMRA, they did a study recently and 59%, that's 59% of Americans have life insurance. And about only half of those with life insurance are underinsured. So I'm thrilled that you're joining us today so that we can have a conversation about closing the coverage gap when it comes to people's life insurance coverage. Today, you will be empowered to ensure that your clients and potential clients have the peace of mind security that comes with sufficient life insurance coverage. Together, we can solve one client, one family at a time. Before I introduce our panelists and breakout moderators, I'd like to go over a few details concerning today's broadcast. Our session consists of two parts. As a panel discussion that will last for 50 minutes, followed by a breakout room discussion that will occur for about 30 minutes. These breakout discussions will provide ideas and content that are vital and that you will learn during the initial panel discussion section. Again, during the panel discussion, you're going to hear from the best and the brightest minds in this area. Then afterwards, it's your turn to have a conversations with these folks one-on-one, get to know what other people in your chosen field of study have learned from. Please be sure to, when you're in your rooms, to turn on your camera and to engage in much like in a conversation would at your local area. So that being said, these breakout rooms are broken into 4 areas. It'll be your choice to choose your area. And they include the following. First area is in property and casualty, and that's for multi-line agents, life and annuities, financial planning, and employee benefits and health insurance. Simply remain on the broadcast following the panel discussion, and you'll appear and you'll basically be able to join your assigned room at that time. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our 4 panelists. First up is our panelist who's focused on the property and casualty multi-line area. Her name is Karina Hatfield. She is the owner of Wegner Insurance and Financial Services in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Karina has over 15 years experience in the financial services industry and is a 3rd generation advisor. She is the president of NAIFA Pennsylvania and the co-chair of a NAIFA, the Young Advisors Team Committee, and last year was the 2020 YAT Leader of the Year. She's a Lilly graduate and a class moderator. Karina will be also in the breakout moderator today for the breakout room for property and casualty. So you'll get a chance to connect with her one-on-one in that group. Next, our life and annuity panelist is the Scott Brennan. Now, Scott has been a NAIFA member for more than 40 years. He's a graduate from Indiana University and is past president of the $1 Million Roundtable and the Forum 400. He is a longtime member of AALU and is a 75th recipient. He was the 75th recipient of the John Newton Russell Memorial Award, which is a huge, huge honor. Our 3rd panelist is Shane Westholter. He is our financial planning panelist. He is the CEO of Gateway Financial Advisors. And since 1988, Shane has been an industry leader in insurance and investments and has developed a proprietary process known as the Quality Life Planning. This process takes the foundations of financial planning and applies them to a client's life before they retire so they can have a quality of life on a daily basis. An entrepreneur at heart, Shane's specialty is building businesses into enterprises and his passion is helping others to do the same. Our fourth and final panelist is the Health and Employee Benefits panelist, and that is led by Susan L. Combs, the CEO of Combs and Company, a full-service insurance brokerage firm with the expertise in the weird and unusual, as she says, quote unquote. She is the youngest national president, years 2014 to 2015, in the over 80-year history of the Women in Financial Services, and served on the national board for 7 years. She was also the recipient of their highest award, which is the Woman of the Year. Currently, Susan is one of just 7 brokers in the New York City area to have the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act PPACA designation. Her expertise in this complex area of health insurance has established Susan as highly sought after expert witness, advisor, and speaker on the Affordable Care Act by law firms, reinsurance companies, and organizations around the country. Again, I would like also to thank our breakout room moderators. As I mentioned earlier, Karina Hatfield will be our breakout room moderator for the property and casualty multi-line. Our life and annuities breakout room will be moderated by Ike Trotter. I'll be hosting the financial planning breakout room, and the health and employee benefits room breakout room will be hosted by Chris Gandy. And now let's begin our conversation. So welcome to our delightful panelists. I see Shane and Karina, Susan, and Scott looking at you. There you are, Scott. So welcome to our panelists, and I want to kick things off. So when you guys read that article from LIMRA, and they mentioned that 59% of Americans have insurance, and then half of them are underinsured. What are y'all's thoughts about that? Shane, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that 59% of the people actually have insurance. That's still, to me, way too low. We need to continue to get the word and the message out there. And then the underinsured, people think that 50,000, 100,000, even 250,000 is a lot of money in some people's eyes, but they don't realize how much they really do need. So again, I think it's an education process. I think it's positive that, people are aware of it. I think COVID-19 and this past year has made people even more aware. This is our time. It's time for us to get out there and continue to be loud in the voice.
You mentioned COVID-19 in particular. Do you think it'd be easier to close that gap now that folks are doing business more online than in previous years, or more challenging? What are your thoughts?
For me personally, I think it has definitely had some positives. Of course, Zoom meetings like this allow us to engage with clients. Very favorable. It also helped DocuSign, doing things electronically over the internet. I think people did become much more comfortable using, as we would say, internet services to do that, or online services. That being said, I also think that it raised the awareness. I think people became more aware of the uncertainty in life. Things happen that are beyond our control at any given time. And, this was a national pandemic that certainly caught many of us unexpectedly, of course, and we had to adjust in life in a lot of different ways. And unfortunately, as sad as we have to admit, there have been people that experienced, death in their families, close friends, relatives, coworkers. Again, the unexpected. So I think the awareness is definitely there. I don't want to say that we should capitalize on tragedy, but that is our business. And when tragedy happens, that's when we need to stand tall, be proud of what we do, and make sure that people understand how they can get our services.
Very good. Susan, what are your thoughts about this gap? Again, 59%.
Well, I think with insurance, a lot of times people don't realize they're underinsured until they need it. And they tend to find out the hard way. So I think a lot of it is just education. And I think as brokers and agents, it's our job to educate the public. But also you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? So I think that a lot of times it's getting people comfortable. I know, my father passed away 2.5 years ago, and my mother is still paralyzed by finances. Lucky enough to have Julie McNeely as her financial advisor, but who, really makes it more simple. And I think that that's the thing, is a lot of people have a lot of fear, and they have fear. And so when they have fear, then they remain underinsured because they don't know who to ask, or they don't, as a woman, a lot of times we don't want to ask a question and make us look stupid is how we think about it. Mm-hmm. So I think making people feel more comfortable talking about these things, I think is going to be, beneficial going forward.
That's good. Fear. They talk about the fear of the known and fear of the unknown. When it comes to clients and their fear, what would you say is the unknown or the known is the reason why there's a gap?
I think it depends on the generation. To be honest, I think, you have different generations that are more risk averse than and others that aren't. And so I think that a lot of it is, when you're younger, you feel like you're bulletproof. So it's never going to happen to me. And then, people that are older tend to start thinking about these things, or they have personal experiences. I think a lot of it is until it hits home, then they don't start thinking about it. I mean, personally, my husband and I set up our trust this past year, and it was something that had been weighing on me since my father passed, because I had to set up a trust in order for us to trigger hospice for him. So it was one of those things that, since it impacted me personally, then that's why I said, you know what, I'm not going to I'm never going to wait till the 11th hour to do this. My father was a 2-star general, and he was also a judge. He set up hundreds of trusts for other people, but it's kind of like the shoemaker's kids. And I think that's one of the things we have to remember in the industry. We got to put our own oxygen mask on first, because sometimes we don't do it for ourselves as we do it for other people.
Wow. 2-star general. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Scott Brennan, if you don't mind me, what are your thoughts? I mean, you've been in the industry for many, many years. The John Newton Russell Award is the pinnacle of in our industry across many different groups. I'd love to get your take on this gap analysis, or the reason for the gap. What are your thoughts? Let's unmute you real quickly. Let's unmute his, and we'll be good to go. I'm going to click on the button. There should be a button that popped up. Click on the unmute and you should be all set. There you go.
I would tell you from the bottom of my heart, when a man loves a woman, she gets better looking every day. When a woman loves a man, he gets more handsome every day. I have subscribed to a newspaper for many, many years that runs twice a week, a column called Tiny Love Stories. In 100 words or less, people will write a story of why they love someone. Every life insurance policy I've ever written, and every life insurance death claim I've ever had, and I've had many. I had 7 last year, is a tiny love story. People only buy life insurance when they love someone more than they love themselves. So if someone came to me and said, could I buy you a cup of coffee? How did you do this all these years? I would say I played detective, and I tried to find people that loved one another. And when you have that sort of a situation, it's a lot easier to have the conversation. If I'm watching television and an ad comes on advertising $500,000 of term for $19.95, they're selling away on weakness. It's sold on price. If a NAIFA member or a Roundtable member or an AALU member sells on love, we're always gonna win. It's not a commercial transaction. It's an exchange of emotion. And every time I wrote every life insurance policy, it was because somebody loved somebody.
That was amazing. Wow. Karina, you're up. Tell me about the gap. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I can see in the property and casualty space why there is a gap. I know when I first started, one of the big things, a kid buys their first car and you sell them a life insurance policy to pay off that loan, because you don't want to have your parents have to pay off that loan for you. But then it was never revisited again. So, there are a lot of kids with a $25,000 life policy or a $50,000 life policy in their 20s who we never went back to. Because you just got busy doing other things, and you'd say, do you want to review that? No, we're good. Nothing's changed, and didn't push those issues. So I can see a lot of people younger having those gaps because they purchased their first house, and you sold to cover the mortgage, and that was it, and didn't do that deeper dive into how much did they really need. Is something better than nothing? Sure. But is it appropriate? No. And I think that's where a lot of those gaps I see on the property and casualty side are now. So speaking to the underinsured.
That's good. That's really good. So this begs the question, why is there a gap? Is it the need is not properly well defined? Is it a factor of cost? Scott, let's start with you. Why is there a gap in the first place?
Because there are fewer of us out banging the drum. Life insurance is sold. I'm pretty good at getting someone to buy it. But life insurance is sold one-on-one, eyeball to eyeball, across a table. Most of the time, I've written life insurance on a garbage man, and I've written life insurance on the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. My very first death claim was for $5,000. We used to write policies that small. I had a claim a couple of years ago for $5 million. And the family I took the $5,000 to was more grateful than the trustees I gave the $5 million to. Now, they didn't teach me that in career school. But life insurance, again, it's a discussion that should be taken place across a kitchen table or a conference room table. And it's about leaving behind a love note for someone, and the tax-free check is just glorious.
If you don't mind me following up, you mentioned a love note for someone, and you earlier talked about the conversation of when you love someone. Where did this language come from? Where did you learn to look at life insurance in that manner?
You're looking at somebody that was never good at math. And to me, the life insurance profession at the high end is 90% social intelligence and 10% product knowledge. I had to know 100% of the 10%. But to me, it's social intelligence. It's getting in front of people, playing detective. I looked for great clients the same way a person would look for a piece of lost jewelry. And you can find, if you want to be a business and community leader in your own hometown, I live in a big, small town, you can do that. And you can be known as someone, Brennan will be calling you, or has he ever sat down and talked to you? I eat at the same place for breakfast most days. I have 2 or 3 places we'll eat lunch at. I've had a little office in an old bank building for 20 years, and it's downtown. I wanted to be a business and community leader, and I am. So it means one day I might sell $100,000 a term, and another day I might be working on a much bigger case. They all give me momentum, and they all keep me headed in the right direction. I don't care if you're a brand new agent or if you're the last recipient of the John Newton Russell Memorial Award. A busy agent is a happy agent. So I want my calendar, if I've committed to work that day, my calendar will be full. And it is a glorious responsibility. I will meet with people and I will talk to them, and I'm going to ask questions that concern their family, their company, their practice, whatever it is. And we're going to have a great conversation. I think it's easier to have it over a meal, but it's okay if they want to do it in my office or in their home or their office. I don't mind getting in my car a bit, but these are heart-to-heart conversations. I've attempted to be a really good listener, and I've tried to sharpen those skills every chance I could get.
That's fantastic. Susan, what are your thoughts? Again, why is there a gap? And is it a need? Is it just not properly defined? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm a little bit on a different side of the fence because I'm on the health insurance and employee benefits side of the fence. And so I think a lot of times for coverage gaps with what I do, A lot of times people don't realize they're there, like I said before, until they need them. So I think one of the things to think about is when we talk to our clients, we have a candid conversation on how they're utilizing the health insurance, because only they can provide those answers. I can guess all I want, but do you have a kid that's a tree climber that's always falling out and is going to have to go to the emergency room? Do you have a husband that has, heart condition, and are you pregnant? Only you have those answers. So, if you are able to provide those more personal type of answers, then we can plan for those coverage gaps. I mean, I'm in New York City, and the biggest coverage gap we have, to be honest, is in vitro. And that's something that comes up time and time again with a lot of our female clients, and even our female clients that are business owners, and they're wanting to provide benefits for their employees, and they want to know, how they can get those things covered, and if there's any way to get those things covered. So a lot of it, again, is education, and if there's ways that we can tailor make things or put different type of supplemental policies in place on the health insurance side to layer in to help them, then we do. But again, it goes back to garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you don't tell me what's going on, there's no way that we can help you plan for that. And that comes to, whether it's property and casualty or even life insurance, disability insurance. I mean, you can't plan for somebody's future if you don't have the facts.
One thing Scott had mentioned, he likes to play detective when connecting with clients. Is there a technique that you like to do to uncover the fact that there is a gap in their plan?
Again, it's just having those honest conversations and asking those questions. Zoom might be kind of new for a lot of people, but for us, we have so many international clients that we've offered virtual meetings for years. So, we always say we'll meet the client where they're at. So if they want to meet in person, we'll meet in person. If they want to do it over the phone, since we have a lot of foreign clients, a lot of times, a lot of the transactions are handled via email because they have time to kind of sit with the words and translate them and make sure that they can formulate their thoughts properly. And then, we can do Zoom, we can do videos, we can do things like that. So I think it's catering and adapting to this different workforce that we have, because they're in all different parts of the world. So we have to be able to, kind of roll with the punches, so to speak.
Very good. Shane, how about you? What are your thoughts on this gap? Why is there a gap?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to a couple of things that Scott said, and I agree 100% with everything he was saying. I've been doing this for about 35 years, and my first death claim check was a $10,000 death claim check to a 7-year-old, to a mother who had lost her 7-year-old son in a drive-by shooting in St. Louis, Missouri. And I can assure you that $10,000, it wasn't about the amount of money. She said something, and many of you have heard me say this before. She said to me, "Shane, thank you for this check. It allows me to keep my dignity and give my son the decency he deserves without having to ask my family, friends, or church for money for his final expenses." And that changed my life. It made me a believer in what we do and that we provide dignity. So when I look at it, any amount of insurance is better than zero. That being said, we've focused on creating dignity for people when it matters most. And that's when the unexpected happens typically. So what if they live? Do they have the money they need to live the life they want to live? What if they linger, sick, hurt, or disabled? Do they have the ability to provide the care that they need and maintain their dignity in that process without having to make family members be the caregivers? What if they leave unexpectedly, death and divorce? Will their assets transfer? Will their loved ones be taken care of? Going back to what Scott said, what is that love message you're leaving behind? How much did I really love you if I leave you destitute or not able to pay the bills or not able to go to college or not able to find the dreams that you would have been able to have if we were still here? And then what's my legacy? We all leave one, as I say, by default or by design. So how do you want to leave it? Do you want to be remembered that you took care of things properly and that you took care of the ones that were dependent on you and the people you love, the organizations you love, philanthropy, charity, and all of that? Or do you want to be remembered, what a cheapskate. He didn't even take care of, what he should have, he or she. So again, like Scott said, I've delivered a lot of death claims, and I'm going to share one short story, JDR, if I can, and that is a woman came into our office. I also serve on a ALS board here in New Mexico, where I'm living currently, and she's 40 years old. She was a nurse at the hospital. She obviously knew what the results were going to be, and she came into my office and she said, when I was first diagnosed, I was hoping it was MS, not ALS, because I could deal with MS a whole lot better than ALS. I had a 7-year-old son in her 40s, and she said, I know I have 5 to 7 years left. Will you help me craft some love letters that I can leave behind? Will you help me make sure that the money is there for him for the rest of his life? And will you help him remember me? And I said, absolutely. We have products that we can use. We're going to use an annuity. And every year there'll be a disbursement that will come out from that annuity to make sure that he remembers how much you cared and loved him. And that's hard conversations for us to have, but it's what we do. And to me, that provides dignity for people, that they can have that peace of mind, if you will, that everything's going to be okay, even when they're not here. And that's what we do. And as Scott said, this is not a product. It's not a commodity. As one of my colleagues, April Lynn Geisler says, it's not a commodity you can buy off the shelf. It's something that has to be personalized for each individual. So I think we need to really understand that in our business. And that gap is there. In my opinion, the gap is there because people get into product analysis, and I call it analysis paralysis. They try to get into the numbers. They try to figure out all this stuff that is not relevant. What's really relevant is, how much do I love you? And how many zeros do you want to put behind that one to prove it? I learned many years ago from a mentor to me. He said, do you love me $100,000 worth, or do you love me $1 million worth? And Shane, don't say anything, let your wife answer. And that made a big difference in my world, because the number of zeros that you put behind the one kind of proves how much you really love someone when you're not here.
Wow. Yeah, in my introduction, I mentioned a quality life planning process. Does that play into this conversation regarding leaving a love note for family members? Is that a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, quality life in short it's the same thing that we all do that are on this call. I mean, all of us are in the financial professional insurance world, and it's really making sure that people can have the financial means to provide what they need at the time that they need it. And again, I go back to the word dignity. That's a big part of what we do, because quality life to me gets down to being able to maintain my dignity. And what I mean by that is, if I am sick, hurt, or disabled, can I maintain my dignity? One short story to kind of prove the point, and I'll end with this. I had a lady who was in her 80s that was a client of mine, and she was very well to do. And I asked her one time, I said, what's the most important thing to you? And after a series of conversations using the old Bill Bacharach approach, it came down to, she wanted to make sure that she was always dressed well, her hair was done, her makeup was applied. And if anyone ever came to visit her, even if she was not cognitive to know they were there in her later years, that she would have her makeup on, her hair done, and always dressed. She did not want them to see her in a nursing home bed, if you will, in a nightgown. And so we made sure that when we set up her plan, that there was money available to have someone come in and provide those services every day, even when she was in a retirement facility and not even cognitive that people were visiting her. She was always presented to be able to maintain her dignity. And to me, that's what matters most. How do we really want others to remember us? And I think that quality of life is a big part of what we can all provide in our profession.
Good. Karina, how about you? Again, the question is the gap. Why is there a gap? Is it a cost? Is it the need? Shane brought up analysis paralysis. Folks get too much information. Perhaps they're online and they get kind of locked up. From your personal experience, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everyone's comments. And to me, I think a lot of people just think it's unaffordable or too expensive, or, out of their budget right now. And I think the thing that we can do the best is kind of sharing those expenses as well. I deal a lot with, clients who are in their 20s and 30s. I'm a third generation agent, so I'm dealing with kids who are even 16, 17, and calling me because they're wanting to purchase their first car and things like that. So trying to have that conversation and explain to them, now we need to start talking about other things. They need to talk about saving. They got their first job. We need to talk about, an apartment, getting renter's insurance, and then life insurance, and having all those conversations. I remember very early in my career, I had a client couple with 2 young children, and they came in for car insurance, called me for car insurance. And they came in to sign the paperwork because 10, 15 years ago, that's what we did. They came in, signed all the paperwork, and they asked me, they were getting ready to go. And I said, well, where's your renter's insurance? Renter's insurance, I don't have that. I said, to cover your stuff. Well, we're careful. We don't like candles and all this, And so they left that day with renter's insurance. And we also had a conversation about life insurance. And husband was in the military, wife a stay-at-home mom. Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't need anything. I'm in the military. I have something. Had another conversation, got life insurance. 2 weeks before Christmas, a couple years later, there was an apartment fire and they were out. And I didn't find out about it. It was like a Friday night. I didn't find out about it until Tuesday. And when I did and realized that they were in there, I had called them and I said, are you okay? Yes. You didn't let us leave that day without renter's insurance. And thank you. Thank you for not letting us leave that day without renter's insurance. We thought it was so expensive and it was like $200 a year. We thought it was so expensive and now we don't know how we would be where we are without it. And thank you. We just want to thank you for the life insurance and we want to thank you. And I said, well, I just presented the opportunity. You took advantage of it. And I think it's having those conversations and taking a minute to talk to people. I think one of the things that really helps is always assuming that they have it. So where do you have your life insurance? And a lot of people that say, I just have it through work, having that conversation, especially now, I think it's easier to have that conversation in a post-COVID environment. Jobs were uncertain for a long time. So having a conversation about your job potentially no longer being there, so then your benefits no longer being there, is an easier conversation now than it was to help people purchase that insurance outside, especially the life insurance outside of work.
Bring up a lot of good points. So I want to switch gears a little bit. There's folks who are proactive and there's some folks who are reactive. And those folks who are here that have ever been through Lilly, the Leadership in Life Institute, know the value of being proactive. However, most of the clients, according to this study, I guess would be more on the reactive side. And the reason why we see that is we see a trend in crowdfunding and in places like GoFundMe, where I just did a quick Google search and found out if you give $100 to a person through GoFundMe, $97.80 actually makes it to that person, while 1.9% plus 30 cents per contribution goes to the house, so to speak. That being said, I'd love to get Karina start with you, since you're working with, you mentioned the younger demographic of clients. What's been your personal experience with this crowdfunding, with this playing a reactive approach to life insurance planning? What are your thoughts?
I don't like it. I don't like it in the, I don't know how else to say it. I don't like it in the life insurance space. I think crowdfunding has a place, but I don't think it's here. It scares me. I mean, and I think every one of us, we kind of had a little conversation before we started on here, so I don't want to take any stories, but we've all had some experiences with it. I've had friends who have set it up and friends who have set it up for friends, didn't know it, didn't want it, and didn't need it. The scary part, I think, I did a little bit of research, that 1099 that people could get if they get over 200 donors or $20,000, that recipient, I mean, you're potentially adding so much more stress with crowdfunding than help. I think there's other ways to do it. I definitely think that obviously life insurance is the way to plan and leave that planned legacy in a proper way and not have to go look to other people for that. I mean, what if you plan on that and you don't get the total amount of money? Then what are you going to do? There's just so many unknowns with it. And life insurance, you can plan on it. You can plan for it. You can put it in that budget and go from there. Why ask your friends and family for that?
Scott, what are your thoughts?
Imagine having tribal knowledge, knowing something worth learning. A debt should last no longer than the person who creates it. And this is what I say to young people if I sit down with them, and I do from time to time. Life insurance cleans up a lot of messes. If you have school loans, I will implore you to have a will and to have some life insurance next to it. I think it's the nicest thing you could do for your parents, whether you like them or not.
That's so good. Susan, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm just over here laughing at Scott. That was great. I think it's rude if you don't talk to the person. And I'm in Karina's school of thought with that, because I mean, you do not know what's going on in somebody's personal life. And, if somebody has health insurance in place, are they going to have the medical bills? If somebody has property and casualty insurance in place and they've insured their home properly and their home burns down, are they going to have the bills because they were properly insured? If somebody dies, if somebody's disabled, I mean, there's just so many personal things that if you were not one of their personal financial advisors or in their personal finance team, their CPA or attorney, you have no business taking on somebody else's financial burdens or projecting your own stuff on them. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They come into it with half the story and they say, well, oh, they must have so many medical bills. Well, you know what? Maybe they're a TRICARE for Life family like my family was. We didn't pay a penny. So I think you have to really fact find. And I mean, is there going to be crowdsourcing, crowdfunding? Yes, right? Because somebody thought it was a good idea and then it's just taken off like wildfire. But I would strongly encourage people that before they donate to a crowdfunding or before they think about setting things up, have a conversation with that person, because to Karina's point, maybe they don't need it. And then they're figuring out like, how the hell am I going to donate this money back because I don't need it? And it's me double dipping and it makes me feel gross, or it's like, hey, I don't want to have the tax burden, or, I did my homework and I set everything up right in my family. So I think I think it's annoying and I think it's rude and I think it's gross, to be honest, unless you know the full story of what's going on.
Shane, what are your thoughts? Again, crowdsourcing and the
Yeah.
like.
I have so many thoughts around that. I agree with everything everybody said. I think, part of it is if the family themselves or a direct family member sets it up, then there might be a need there and it might serve a purpose. I think crowdfunding has a great purpose in other things, other types of ventures. But in our space, in life insurance specifically, I think we've got to be very cautious about that. I got all kinds of thoughts and not enough time to share them here, but part of it is it's real easy for people just to donate some money to get rid of maybe some of their own conscience of guilt or their own feelings of guilt. Are we really moving towards being dependent upon each other to socially survive versus being responsible for our own actions and the things that we should be responsible for? And I think on the crowdfunding side too, there's that. I'm going to go back to the dignity, as I shared with all as panelists before we all jumped on here. I had a celebrity that I worked with very closely, and he lost his daughter here recently. Someone set up a crowdfunding on their behalf, and he contacted me to ask if I had anything to do with that, and I said absolutely not. And he was actually insulted that someone would do that because it made him and his family appear as if they weren't responsible or didn't have the means or the funds to take care of their own daughter's final expenses. And he said, I don't need that money, and I'm kind of insulted that someone thought that we did. So I think we got to be very careful in the social media world that we now live. And I go back to what Karina and Susan said, that we need to find out from the family. We need to fact find first, and it may be good intentions with the wrong results. And so that gets back to saying, let's ask the family what they need. I know I've had in my past a number of times where, you would go to a funeral service and they said, in lieu of flowers, please give to this charity or that charity, meaning they don't need the money. They don't want the money and they don't want you to waste it on flowers. They'd rather it go to benefit something of value. So I'll shut up with that, but so many thoughts. I'm not saying that I'm against crowdfunding in general for other things, but in our space, I don't agree with it at all.
It sounds like the consensus is crowdfunding has unintended consequences that many people don't realize when they participate in that. And that, as Ben Franklin would say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure by being properly planned on the front end. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, and Susan, throw it over to you. The American Rescue Plan Act, if you don't mind, share I know you've got a lot of knowledge in that space. How does that tie into this life insurance gap coverage conversation?
Not so much into the gap conversation as to your clients that are employers are going to be hit with this now. I mean, if they haven't been hit with it now, or you might have, say, some individual clients. So basically, under the American Rescue Plan Act, it was signed March 11th, and basically it's premium assistance for COBRA. And so if you were a former employee or you have former employees that were involuntarily terminated, so not for misgross conduct, if they have a reduction of hours during, due to COVID, or they were let go for a downsizing, then they could be eligible for basically free COBRA from April 1st to September 30th. So as employers, we are all going to have to notify employees that basically have been terminated since November 2019, because it's within that first COBRA window of 18 months. So anybody that's currently on COBRA, again, involuntary. So if somebody left you to go work somebody else, like they're not eligible for the subsidy, but there's going to be a lot of notifications that you're going to have to send out by May 31st as an employer to these former employees. Sometimes that's hard to locate them. So it can be a very arduous task. If you're a company that's under 20 employees, the carriers are going to provide the premium. And then they're going to take it as a tax credit. If you're an employer that has over 20 employees, you're going to have to pay for this premium for those 6 months. And then they're saying you get it back as a FICA tax credit. And we all know how much FICA is. It's not that much. So it might be a few years before you see that money all the way back. So it's something to kind of keep in mind because you might have employer groups that are asking about that stuff. Or if you're financial planners, if people are looking for money right now, that's a great solution for them to find money and to kind of give them some breathing room on their budgeting for 6 months. But have them go back to their former employers if they haven't received notice by May 31st, because the employers will get fined if they're not going to be sending it out. So we get new information on it every single day, it seems like. So if you have like a health insurance partner that you work with, contact them, see if they can help you formulate some language to go out to your clients to just kind of give them some knowledge, because it's just one more thing we have to deal with. And as employers, I mean, with COVID, a lot of people have downsized and it's hard. So if you have those companies that are over 20 employees, they got rid of the employees because they couldn't afford them. Now you're going to have to start shucking out thousands of dollars. And these are also people that maybe decline COBRA. So if they decline COBRA, they can come back and take COBRA again. Or even if, say, they went into the exchange and got coverage, they can come back and say, hey, I want to take COBRA because I know it's free for the next 6 months. So kind of keep those things in mind. It's fun.
That's one of those, it pays to belong to an association that you have somebody who knows that information. And just like that, I just took a lot of notes. So I'm going to switch gears up again. We're going to go over to personalities. Again, Scott, we'll start with you. A lot of the conversation was initially with the gap is very analytical in nature. However, we're going to shift from the head to the heart and talk about because people make decisions usually based on their personalities or their gut. It depends on their personality. So perhaps client personalities, that could be a reason why there's a coverage and gap with life insurance. What are some different social styles or personalities that clients may show, and what are some ways that from your personal experience that you've helped work through those challenges?
Before I forget, thanks for the great job you've done. And it's really a privilege to be with these three wonderful people that I've never met before, but I really appreciate all of you. You're great. A young radiologist wanted to start a practice in my hometown, and we ended up meeting each other. And he told me from the beginning he was a numbers guy, quote unquote. And it got really hard dealing with him, working with him, trying to get him to do the right thing. And finally, over breakfast one day, I said to him, have you ever watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life? And he said, the Jimmy Stewart movie? Yeah. What about it? I said, can you watch that without crying? And he said, yeah, I'm a numbers guy. And I said, well, you're having breakfast with an old person that's not. I can hardly watch that anymore. It makes me cry. The connection between two human beings And women are better at this than men are. Two women can connect on their way to the ladies' room better than it takes some men 5 years, shoulder to shoulder in a social situation. But I'm here to tell you, a pessimist says, my house burned down. I've lost everything. But an optimist says, my house burned down, but I can finally see the sky. A cancer patient said that. So I think love doesn't need an interpreter. I was very slow when I was a young man, full of testosterone, not to hug people. And today, if it's appropriate, I'm going to hug them. And I'm going to tell them, you're great. I love being with you. I think you're a wonderful person. And during COVID or during 2009, or when bad things happen, like 9/11, I've said to people, if you go sideways, I want you to call me and I'll buy you a cup of coffee because you're a great person. I've never been around too many people that told me that I didn't want to be around a little more. So I would say, look for the connection. Look for the connection. Everybody out there in the great American public, there's about 2% that's just like you. And if you can find them and hang on to them, you'll build a wonderful clientele. But treat this life we're in as a generosity contest. And start by driving like a nice person. You can't be a great woman or man and drive like a jerk. Start with that. Dickens was right. It is the best of times. It is the worst of times. And I decide that every morning before I put my coat on. So I'm my own chief attitude officer. And I have to say to myself, when I get up early and make a big pot of coffee and get the newspapers off the front porch, this day is only going to come once. I better make the most of it. And I want to be the bright spot in somebody's day. If someone passes through our lives, they should be better for it.
Wow. Well, I don't know about our fellow panelists, but you're definitely the bright spot in my day today. That was that was so good. Oh, I love it.
Well, thank you.
I mean that, I really do. Shane, you're up. So personalities, and how do you work with people? There's a gap. How do we work through different personalities to get that gap squished?
Scott, I love you. Thank you. You've been a great mentor to many of us, so appreciate you a lot.
Thanks
sir.
a million.
You bet. I think, a couple of things that Scott hit on there too is, we live in this age of, as I said before, paralysis analysis. So people are going to research, especially now with technology availability. They're going to go out and try and find information. They're going to Google information. I remember back in the day when you could stand up and do a presentation and say, oh, about 60% of the people, blah, blah, blah. Now you say 60% of the people, blah, blah, blah. Somebody in the audience is going to go in and what resource is that and what citation and where can I find that survey, right? So I think it's totally different in that we do need to be prepared to do a little bit of the analytical piece of it. We do have different personalities and some will connect with us on the emotional side, some will connect with us on the intellectual side, some will look for numbers. That being said, at the end of the day, no one buys our product because it makes logical sense financially. No one buys our product because all the bells and whistles. No one buys our product because they were walking down the street and go, oh, I think I might buy life insurance, disability, health insurance, long-term care today. People buy our product because something in their life has either happened that has affected them emotionally, or they saw something emotionally, or they felt something emotionally, and they realize I better take care of things. And I think we need to be aware of that. This new age of, well, let me send you a 50-page illustration and try and give you product knowledge so that it makes logical sense to buy doesn't exist. And I'll be honest, I think it goes back to no different than buying a car. We all know we need transportation, and some people might go on the internet and buy their car off the internet, but most people that I know still like to go and feel what a car feels like to drive and compare their car, one car to another, and then go maybe buy it over the internet. So honestly, JDR, I would have to say that all the different personalities. We have to be aware of them, break them down into 4, break them down into 8, whatever it is. But it's still an emotional sale at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Susan, what are your thoughts?
Give me the question again.
Again, the question is, we talk about the gap being an analytical equation, but it's more of a gut. It's more of a heart level decision because people buy based on their emotions, right?
Yep.
Knowing that there's different personalities, what are some ways that, what are from your experience, you've seen different client personalities and how you've helped manage that gap with those different personality styles?
So typically when it comes to managing the gap for our clients, there is an emotional component because it's usually because there's a child with special needs. So it becomes very emotional. So because there's, we know health insurance covers a lot of things. I mean, the ACA gave a lot of uniformity to different states. I mean, for example, prior to the ACA, you had to decide if you were going to provide maternity coverage. And then if you had an employee that got pregnant and you didn't have it, well, oh, sorry, So like there became a lot of uniformity. So there's a lot of less gaps on the health insurance side that there were before. But there still are some. And where we've seen things are, say you have a special needs child that has prosthetics. We can get the prosthetics, the main prosthetics covered by insurance. But if you want that little child to be able to run track with his peers or do swimming, those are not considered medical devices because there's not a medical necessity on it. So there's a company by the name of ArmadaCare. You guys might have remembered First Rehab, and ArmadaCare came out with a product. And I'm not pushing them. I'm just saying that this is a way that we're able to help the gap. Where you can use it as a business expense. So basically what it equates to is whatever the tax rate is of the corporation, you're able to put aside a bucket of money to pay for things that are administered by a healthcare provider. Usually in our instances, it's you have to have 2 buckets. So there has to be 2 people, but you can discriminate. This is something that you could do, say for a key employee that has a special needs child. If you see that they're missing a lot of work and say, hey, what's going on here? So maybe, it's to provide, more home health aid time because there's a limit on the home health aid visits. But you know what? It sounds kind of silly and superficial. I like to partake of these things, but the other guy, set it up for his wife to get Botox. So, it's because it's administered by a physician. So there's creative ways that, we get a lot of times with dental. Where dental is a discount plan, and employees come complaining saying, oh, this dental insurance sucks because I spent this $1,000 and now I have no dental insurance for the rest of the year. So we're able to kind of help with that gap through something like ArmadaCare, or getting a little bit creative with some of those things. Or there's a company too that we've just started using that does financing or medical financing for services, and it's 0% interest, and they can pay it back through a payroll deduction. So say you have somebody that wants to get, their mouth's all jacked up and they hit that $1,000 and they need to have, 3 root canals, and that's $1,000 a pop, but they don't have that money. They're able to do it through a payroll deduction and to pay back that money. And this company will actually negotiate lower rates on the actual services. And then they take half of the savings. So that's how they make their money, but it's no charge to the employees. And it's kind of a win-win for employers and employees because it's a creative solution to kind of help with some of those gaps that are along the way.
So good. Wow. Karina, how about you? Final thoughts on the relationships and personalities and the gap.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my business, which, every day I'm seeing like the car insurance and the golf cart and all that stuff, as well as the life insurance. But my main clients who are coming in are, I want this. They don't want anything else. They just want what they're telling me. They don't know they need anything else. And so it's, to certain people, it's having that conversation with them and giving them the product they need and kind of setting up a trickle later of other things that we offer or other things that we've had a discussion briefly about. And, I don't need that. I don't want that. So there's, those people that come in and they've already done some research and they feel they already know I need this. I don't need anything else. That's it. Just sell me what I asked for. And then you have people who are, kind of doing some research, but they come in and they want to have a conversation with you and make sure that what they thought they wanted is what's right. And a lot of people, I enjoy spending time with people who have done some research. So they kind of have some background knowledge. or feel they have some background knowledge, and then we can have a conversation about it. And that's nice too. And then there's people who come in and they refer to you by someone who you've been great to, and they have no knowledge maybe, and they're just like telling you their life story and saying, please make everything right for me, help me. And obviously that's my number one. I love when that happens, and love spending time with those people. But the ones who come in and share with you nothing usually have some form of story behind it, especially when it's life insurance or some form of planning that they want to do. They might have a story that they don't know you, so they might not be comfortable sharing with you yet. And you have to spend that time gently trying to find why they came to you and said, I need $100,000 of term insurance. They didn't just come up with that number out of nowhere. So, spending that time and trying to have those questions, thought-provoking questions that aren't just a yes or no, that you can try and build a conversation, build a rapport, and find out where they're coming from. I think that's easiest done in person. So for me, that's hurting this past year. I agree with Scott on that. But we are, having some conversations through Zoom or having some conversations over the phone. I know a lot of my younger clients are, open more on the phone even. So it's just breaking that down and trying to make a personal relationship.
JDR, one more comment.
Sure.
I think that if we don't help people fill those gaps, then of course, we all know that they're going to deplete their own personal assets, their investment accounts, or their personal savings, whatever it might be. And I think one thing that we need to remember is we're in an industry where we can, as a phrase that I picked up many years ago from mentors, we provide money at a discount through the products and services that we provide. $1 premium buys a whole lot more benefit than a dollar for dollar exchange. So we're in the business of providing money at a discount. And if we start to understand and learn that, we can really help fill some of those gaps.
That's really good too. So I need you guys, before we transition to our groups, do me a solid. Take your mouse, go into the chat section at the bottom where it says chat. You're going to see a little bubble box. It's got a little, like a person talking. Click on that. Then I want you to scroll to where it says Survey Monkey. Click on the Survey Monkey. It's going to bring up a window. And now I want you to park that Survey Monkey survey on your desktop. Do not fill it out now. Hold down Alt and Tab on your keyboard and come back to this main screen so everybody can see. So go ahead and open up Survey Monkey, put that on your desktop. When we're done with today's webinar, I want you to go ahead and take a few seconds, fill that out. That would help us out tremendously. We want honest feedback. What you like, what you didn't like, what are your thoughts? Were there any key takeaways? Whatever you want to share, just go ahead and put that there. But then come on back. So if you're looking at the survey right now and you're not looking at me, hit Alt, hold down Alt, hit Tab, and it'll bring you back to the Zoom meeting. So at this time, we're going to transition into the breakout rooms. Ike, if you could join us on the video, Chris Gandy, myself, and Karina. We are going to now break out into the 4 groups. Again, if you have interest in connecting and continuing this conversation, we encourage you to do so. We got some huge nuggets of wisdom that were shared with us today, and I'd like to continue the conversation. So if you have interest in Brendan or whoever on the back end is bring up the opportunities for you to choose your group. Again, if you're a property and casualty multi-line person and you want to break out into a group and talk through that, you can do so. Life and annuities, financial planning, and health, as well as employee benefits. So that being said, Zach, I believe you got the groups. You can bring them up. And